3 weeks ago, I gave Claude the reins and I had it design a digital marketing campaign for my small business. I have zero background, zero experience in digital marketing. So I put all my trust into Claude. I had it develop the strategy, the plan, and it broke it down for a 3 week sprint. In this video, we're going to dive into the details, what worked, what didn't work. Spoiler, it worked and it was awesome. We'll dive into the prompts and we'll see where we're going next. So let's dive in. Okay, so let's jump back into where we were. What we tried to do in the last video was we tried to create a digital marketing campaign for the Golden Cod. The Golden Cod is a small e-commerce business that sells apparel and jewelry. The company started off pretty hot in about 2020. Things slowed down over the past couple of years because my wife and I just got pulled in different directions. We didn't have enough time to put into the Golden Cod. And so I wanted to see going into the holiday season this year if I could use AI to help drive sales, primarily through digital advertising, which we had never done before. Historically, we had only done Instagram posts. We would post on Instagram and we get sales. That's really how we are driving sales to the business for the last 4 years. And so I wanted to see if AI could help us start getting into digital advertising. So in the last video, we used Claude Opus 4.5 to create a digital marketing plan. And here's what it came up with. So it came up with a 3 week sprint, and I really like how it broke everything down. It was extremely easy to follow. I had never done any of this. I'd never set up ads on Meta or Google, and we had actually never done email campaigns either. So it came up with a 3 week plan, and I followed it to a T. So the first week, we had to set up the Meta ad accounts and get that set up. The plan also suggested to set up free shipping for orders over $75. So we did that. We also were recommended to create a holiday collection focused just on the items that we had a lot of stock of. So that for us was the jewelry and the hats. So we did that. And then we went to actually launch the Meta campaign and the Google campaign. And both were extremely easy to follow. I kept checking in with Claude along the way. If I got stuck, I would ask for help and it would put me in the right direction. And then I started drafting the first email campaign. And so that was really easy too. So I just went into Shopify. Shopify also makes it really easy, but basically they have a bunch of templates. I picked a template and then I just went back and forth with Claude saying, how does this template look? How do we adjust it? I gave Claude all of our brand guidelines. So it was able to modify the emails and the formatting to match our brand and our voice. And then on the second day, we sent out our first email and immediately got sales. That was a huge success. We had about 700 people on our email list that had bought through us in the past and had submitted their email to subscribe. And so this email went out to 700 people. That was the first email. We ended up doing 3 emails so far, and then the 4th email is going to go out on December 15th. Which is going to be the last day that we're doing shipping. So like I mentioned, I followed this to a T. I pulled this up and made sure that I was checking each box and moving along. So week 1 was, I thought, a very big success. I'll dive into the numbers right after this. And then week 2, we were just checking how everything was going, looking at the Meta and Google campaigns, seeing how that was doing. And then obviously keeping up with all the sales as we were getting them and sending out all the shipping. I sent out another email, just like a gift guide that second week. And then we're now in week 3. So on the 14th, which is 3 days away, that's going to be the last email. And so that's really the cutoff of this. But I thought right now would be a really good time to check in. And so for the success metrics going in, we had revenue targets of 2 to 4K. So this was the plan. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to Claude and do our check-in. So I'm going to go back to Claude, and then for this, I'm using Opus 4.5. I think the model's been fantastic. Really good for coding. I think for general chatting, I'm still preferring ChatGPT, but I thought start to finish, all I used for this project was Claude Opus 4.5, and it was awesome. So we're going to send a prompt in to basically just say, hey, we're almost towards the end of this campaign. Let's just do a check-in. Let's see what worked, what didn't work, and let's start diving into the numbers. So I have a prompt here ready to go. I'm going to give a sales report from Shopify that has all of our sales since the campaign started. I have just a high level overview of site visits, sale orders from Shopify. And then we have the results, which are just screenshots from Meta and Google. So I'm going to send those all in and see where Claude takes us. Okay, while Claude does its thing, let's just go right over to the numbers because this thing was awesome. This absolutely blew me out of the water. I went in with, I would say, pretty low expectations just because we had never done the digital ads. I just didn't really know how they were going to perform. But you can see here that we had 1,300 site visits to our website, which was a 360% increase from the year before, which was unbelievable. And then we had over $2,000 in sales, which was 20 orders. So this definitely exceeded my expectations. I'm curious to dive in to see which of the campaigns worked the best and how we would fix. But just at a high level, the math, like just seeing the number of sales that we got was amazing. And I think it's really amazing too, because we really weren't doing the business was really pretty like stagnant. We weren't doing anything. We weren't posting on Instagram. The business was just sitting there. So it just basically went from like dead to alive really quick. And that was really thanks to this marketing campaigns. Still working. It looks like it's building out a PowerPoint, which is interesting because I'm not sure I actually asked for that right away. I like Claude's PowerPoint capabilities, so that's a good thing. And that's the direction we're going to go in anyway, so that's good. But let's see, did I ask for a PowerPoint? It is December 11th. It's time to check in on the ad campaign. Here are the results. What would we improve for next? So I didn't ask for a PowerPoint, but it's going for it. Ambitious. That's good. And then I can see, all right, so in the notes it's saying, or it's working logs, I'll build a professional presentation matching the Golden Cod brand and style. I think that's one of the biggest strengths. If you're in a workplace and you're trying to create PowerPoints, Claude is absolutely hands down the best at that. I think the copy itself, I think you're better. If you have an idea for a presentation, I think it's best to work with ChatGPT just to create the overall format and the text that's going to be on each slide and the overall messaging. But once you have that nailed down, Claude's ability to match your style guidelines and then the visuals that it uses and then just the overall look and feel are awesome and really ready to go in a real business. So I like using that. But yeah, so its ability to match to your own guidelines is great. And we could see that in the presentation that it did last time. I thought this was a really clean presentation where Claude could still improve a little bit on the presentations. It doesn't exactly have the spacing and the layout down 100%. So if I were to use this in a real business, I'd have to download it to PowerPoint and make edits there, which is a little bit of time consuming, but still saves a ton of time. But you can see right here, like the title overlaps the subtitle. But for the rest of it, it really did a really good job. And then the other thing is so once you download it to PowerPoint, instead of everything being like in groups, each individual thing on the screen is a separate item in PowerPoint. So if you want to make changes, it does take a little bit of a time setting that up. But like I said, still overall saves a lot of time. What I've noticed, it takes a lot of time to actually build the PowerPoint because you can see it's going in and it's adjusting the padding and it's adjusting the layout. So it looks like it takes a bunch of stabs at that first, which is maybe them trying to address some of those issues. All right, come on, Claude. Let's get the presentation. Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, and you can see that it created the PowerPoint and then created a PDF. So I haven't seen anything yet, but what it's doing, it's going slide by slide and actually validating the presentation and the layout. So that's probably how it's getting a little bit better than it was even just a few months ago. Okay, so before we dive into the PowerPoint, let's just read the text really quick. Okay, campaign was a success. We hit the goal. We knew that. Yeah, so I knew that email was definitely going to be our biggest driver because I could see that coming through. So when we got a sale in Shopify, I could see that it came from the email campaign. And without diving into anything real, I just knew that was going to be the best outcome of this campaign because it was zero cost. So we just sent out emails. We weren't paying anything to do the emails. And so it's saying that we got an open rate of, like 50, 60%, which is above the industry average. So that was good. Non-salesy language. I really tried hard not to be pushy or sales pitchy in those. And then the gold pendant necklace was our hero product. And then jewelry first strategy, 67% of the revenue came from jewelry. And that was something that it should have been obvious to me, but when I went into this, I was thinking that we were going to try to push as much of our apparel as possible. But our apparel, when I gave the inventory to Claude, it pointed out that we had pretty bare bones inventory on the popular sizes for most of our top sellers for apparel. So it told us not to push those in ads because the customer would be frustrated if they saw an ad, went to go buy it, and they didn't have their size. So we focused all these campaigns across all these different platforms on jewelry and hats. So that makes sense. So 67% of the revenue came from jewelry. All right, so let's see. The worst performing campaigns were the meta ads. So that was high cost per purchase. So we had a 92, 91 CPA versus our target was 30. We had 6 tracked purchases through Meta. And it's saying maybe the algorithm needed more time. And then Google, I saw we had 0 conversions, but we did have 156 clicks. So I did notice that we had a low number of sales coming through Meta, but every time I personally went on my own Instagram account, I saw the ads everywhere. And I know that I had friends and family that they were seeing the ads too. Maybe the person wasn't clicking in that moment, but maybe it just brought awareness to the brand, and maybe then they saw the email, and the email was maybe the second time they thought of the brand, and that's what got them to purchase. So yeah, I don't know, like, it looks like mathematically the Meta ads didn't perform well, but I know it definitely put our name and our brand out there to a lot of people in everyone's Instagram feed. So I thought that was great. So let's look at the actual presentation. All right, I didn't ask for the presentation, and I didn't provide in the prompt anything about our color palette or our themes, but it grabbed all of that from prior chat history. So amazing, that's awesome. This matches our brand. Okay, so let's dive in. So an executive summary. We had 2,000 in sales. The ROAs. All right, so we get an explanation on the ROAs. Let's see. Return on ad spend, obviously. How did I not know that? Okay. Simplest way to measure if your advertising is profitable. Revenue from ads divided by ad spend. We spent $695 on ads and generated 2,000 in revenue. So 3 times 1. But that's not all tied back to, that's overall. Okay, so overall, but that's not tied exactly to Meta. So that would have been even worse. Okay, all right. So that makes sense now. Our total ad spend was $695. Gives the breakdown. And this was also recommended by Claude. We went heavier on Meta, less on Google. And all right, key findings. Revenue goals met. Email was the star. Meta CPA was too high. And all right, so it looks like the Google tracking was just broken. All right, so we need to fix that next time. And then channel performance. Look at the, every time I do something like this where we're creating something from scratch, whether it's a website or if it's an app or it's a presentation, I just cannot believe like where we are right now with this technology. This looks amazing, and it looks like something that a professional consulting company would have done. Okay, so channel performance. This slide is awesome. All right, email, Meta ads, and Google ads. Revenue, spend. Okay, I will say this. Visually, this looks awesome, but it's a little confusing that we have the revenue from the email, but then the spend from the ads. I think you'd want to have just revenue across the top for all of them. But okay, so let's just start with the email. We had an open rate, the click rate, 0 cost. The Meta ads, we had 6 purchases. Reach was 16,000. So that sounds like that's a lot of people. So that sounds like that was good. And then Google ads, 156 clicks. Okay. And then email. Okay. So then it's going to go into a deep dive of the email. So the email drove 28% of the revenue at 0 cost. And we had higher open rates versus the industry average. Okay, and this shows a breakdown of the emails that I sent. So we did the free shipping just dropped, free hat this weekend, and then not sure to get, and I'll link to the, I'm not sure what that was, a link to the holiday collection. And then what I think is great is that the open rate didn't drop. I thought maybe we'd do the first one and maybe the customers be like, oh, we haven't seen an email from Golden Cod before. And then after that, be like, oh yeah, here's a Golden Cod email. We know what it is. But that actually went up, which is awesome. And I'm actually really interested to see where this last email goes to try to get the last minute shoppers, because historically we usually get a big pop right at the end of the order period. And then it has goals for next year. So I thought that was great. All right. And then because I also gave the Shopify breakdown in sales, not just the ad performance, but our actual sales, so we could go into each product. So here is an overview of that. So let's see what we're doing. Well, also I like the feel of this slide, but we got to do some things. So if you're doing a chart like this, you always want the big one to be at the top, because that's where you want your eyes to go. But yeah, so gold pendant was the biggest seller. We still had crew neck sales, even though we weren't pushing them in the campaigns. Hats we pushed, and then the other jewelry we also pushed. Okay, so it's in the correct order. And then jewelry, 67% of the revenue. This is great. Okay, and then what worked and what didn't. So this would be really helpful for me to go into another campaign. So email, we know that worked. Jewelry first strategy worked. That worked for this, but I think once we get our inventory back on hand, apparel I think would be a little bit heavier, leading with that. Free shipping, I thought that worked. Yeah, and actually, so you can see our average order value was 105. So everyone was getting that free shipping there. And then traffic increase was just insane. All right, so let's dive into that was the good. Let's see the bad. So we know Meta didn't perform that well. Google, we need to do some more setup. Then it's saying that 21 days wasn't enough for Meta's algorithm to fully learn. And then site conversion rate, 45% is decent but not great. Landing page optimization could improve this for next year. Okay. And then recommendations for next year's holiday campaign. So focus resources on what proved effective. Email, yes, yep. So double down on email, fix tracking first, and then start ads earlier. Kind of talked about that earlier. Okay, so invest in email building list. I see. So we want to try to come up with incentives probably to get people to sign up for our emails, especially because we know how well it worked. So yeah, that was awesome. All right. So where do we go from here? So definitely the campaign worked. I knew that Claude was a great model, or Opus 4.5 was a great model from doing everything with app building, but really thinking at a high level and developing strategy, I think has been awesome through this. And it's been a really good thought partner too. Like I said before, I usually rely on ChatGPT for more of the thought partner, co-CEO, co-founder, bounce ideas off of, ideation, all of that. But I did all of this with just Claude, and I think the results kind of speak for themselves. And then it also, the PowerPoint ability and the presentation ability is just amazing. All right, so we know the PowerPoint works. We know the strategy works. I think another thing I'd like to test out is how well it does with more of an Excel analysis. Okay, so I have a prompt to make it an Excel analysis. So just as a make believe, if I had other employees, or maybe I'm the marketing person, I want to share this with more of a finance person or a business owner. So let's try that. Okay, and then we have the Excel sheet ready to go. So let's see what it came up with. So also I think so I've used this for work in the past too when I've been doing presentations, and I'll ask for support basically in an Excel workbook. So I've been really impressed with the Excel work too that comes out of Claude. So I think that's really clean and basically ready to use. I would say obviously it would be really nice if we could see formulas throughout, which I don't think you can. Okay, we do have some formulas. Actually, it does have formulas. That might be an update since the last time I've tried this, but that's awesome. So that helps out a lot. All right, so we have inputs. It looks like this is all the data that I had provided it from our campaign here, the Meta ads, the Google ads, all the email marketing, and then the dashboard. Okay, so I don't think there's anything revolutionary to show here, but just the ability that we could also go into Excel and we could probably use this to start modeling and forecasting for next year. All right, and then I guess as we look forward, the next steps is how do we build on this and continue our momentum into 2026? So I think the spring is usually a time where we would start dropping new products. So let's see if it can take what it learned here and then build us a plan for 2026 that I can follow too. So here's a prompt. So based on our campaign and our learnings, draft, 2025, got the date wrong there. 2026 campaign. And then, okay, so I didn't ask for it earlier, but it just did it, which I thought was amazing. But I'm going to ask it this time for the PowerPoint. I'm going to say to use our color palette. And then one prompt that I always love throwing in anytime I'm making a presentation or a deck is to make the presentation Bain and McKinsey quality, the consulting firms, and then use their best practices. I feel like that always makes a very easy to understand presentation that looks extremely professional. All right, so let's let that rip. Okay, so the presentation is ready. And again, it took a while to actually compile the final version. So that's heads up if you're making PowerPoints, plan to wait 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, so holiday 2025 proved our model works. Spring is the opportunity to scale. So first, paid campaign exceeded targets. Execution gaps, limited upside. So Meta, that was an issue. Google tracking, too short of a runway. And then small email list, okay? And then the resolution. So because I prompted it for the Bain and McKinsey, I think both of them use this, but the situation, the complication, the resolution, that's straight from their playbook. So we're seeing that in action here. So for resolution, spring 2026 applies learnings at scale, fixed tracking before campaign starts, obvious, double the list to 1,400. That sounds aggressive, but I thought the goals going into the holiday campaign were aggressive. We hit that. Lead with proven jewelry products, 8 weeks. Okay, so 5 principles should guide. Email first, ad second. Yes, jewelry leads every campaign. I do think that's going to change if we can get our inventory levels back to what they should be for our crew necks and apparel. Authentic voice over promotional tactics. Yes, that's always really important for us. We don't want to sound gimmicky or salesy. And then measure before you spend. Google is broken, so we could optimize that. And then give algorithms time to learn, okay? Shift investment towards email and targeting, email marketing, list growth, 8 emails, 0 cost, highest ROI. Key shifts from our holiday, email went to 0 to 40%, retargeting new, cold perspective. Okay. I would like to know, like, how do we grow the email marketing list? Okay, so improved measurement will enable faster optimization. And 3 action items that we can set up now. All right, so we have a little bit of overlap in the title here. All right, so grow email list now. Add pop-up to site. Okay, so run Insta. Okay, so this is actually what I was looking for. How do we grow the email list? So add pop-up to site, run Instagram giveaway, and then target 1,400 subscribers. Okay, fix tracking, prepare creative. Sure. And then bottom line, email is your unfair advantage, double your list, lead with jewelry, fix tracking, and spring 2026 will outperform the holidays. So that's awesome. Okay, so I hope you're as excited as I am seeing the results from this. I think seeing the 2,000 sales come in and rack up over the last 3 weeks was amazing to watch. Going in completely new to digital advertising, my expectations were really low. I gave Claude the reins and said, let's guide this in and let's hopefully get a successful campaign here. But I did everything it followed to the T and it worked out fantastically. Just at a high level, the strategy it came up with was great. Diving into our inventory levels and really putting me in the direction of going all in on the jewelry, which is something I would not have done without the recommendation from Claude. So that was great. And then going all the way into the technical details, setting up the meta ads was a lot of steps, a lot of clicking, a lot of forms to fill out. But I basically had Claude on the left and I had Meta on the right. I went through step by step. If I had a question, I would just take a screenshot, send it over to Claude, and I was able to wrap this up. I think I did all the changes to the Shopify website. So we made the orders over $75, got free shipping. So I added that to the site. I added a holiday collection guide. And then I made all the ad campaigns and I set my first email up. And I think I did all of that in under an hour the first night that I gave this a whack. So it was awesome. So if I were to put a grade on this, was an A+. The $2,000 in sales and then just the overall kind of energy I have again, refocused and motivated to go back all in on Golden Cod. So I'm really excited to see where this goes next year. And so I hope the big takeaway for you is that, yes, we did this for a small business and an e-com business, but you could really take this and apply this to anything. If you're doing marketing, if you're doing finance, any function that you're in, just throw it into Claude or ChatGPT and just go nuts. And I think you're going to be thoroughly impressed. So I hope you like this. If you liked it, please leave a like and a subscribe. If you have any suggestions on where we can take this next, please leave a comment in the comment section. And then I'll be adding a playlist for these 2 videos, and then we'll keep adding as we go forward. So I have other ideas on maybe some apparel creation, taking it a step further and maybe building out more of an inventory platform to help me get out of Excel sheets. But I have a lot of ideas for 2026, and so that will be adding to that playlist. So thanks for watching, and hope to see you in the next one. Thanks.